Okay, you can begin.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone in the class. Good morning, Mr. Bisu. And as Mr. Bisu mentioned earlier, we have come to basically the end of the presenting portion of our course, which is the chapter that we are going to be doing this afternoon on leading change, which is a very important topic that all of us are supposed to be aware of, given that we are managers, we are supervisors, and change is something that we cannot escape whatsoever. So let me introduce the team that is going to be doing this presentation this afternoon. We want to begin with Peter Edwards of the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. We also have Raf Guerra, who is also a fire officer. Jairaj Samsundar, who is here from the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, and myself, Jason Shields, also a fire officer in the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service. This is the team that is going to present to you on leading change today. Now, change obviously is going to be a word that you're going to be hearing throughout this presentation. Because, well, apart from the fact that it is the subject of the presentation, it is something that we need to be a little more aware of. As a matter of fact, it's one of those unsung responsibilities that we all have as supervisors to lead change within our groups or teams, as well as our organization, as small as it is. And we've often heard the saying that the only constant in life is change. And I'm pretty certain that all of us can attest to that. So this is something that, because we've recognized that, this is something that that many scholars would have developed processes in order to deal with change. And this is what we're going to be dealing with this morning in this topic. All right. So at this point, what I'm going to do, you're going to hear me later on in the presentation. But before I do that, I just want to touch on the objectives, the things that we are definitely going to touch on in this presentation. As I see my slide is taking a while to change, and the rain is giving me some competition. All right, another change. We had good weather a while ago, and now we have some change, but I had to deal with it. I had to come inside and ensure that everyone could hear me. So as you could see on the screen, we've listed the objectives that we are going to be dealing with so that everyone is going to be enlightened on the issue of leading change. First, we're going to be dealing with the recognition of social and economic pressures for change in today's organization, in all our organizations, whether it be the fire service, the police service, the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment, and so on. We're also going to be dealing with implementing the 8-stage model of planned major change. That's something we're going to be talking about specifically later on in this presentation. We're going to expand on your own and other creative, and I was just having a little problem here with my system. Expand your own and other creativity and facilitate organizational innovation. Innovation is something that we can all learn, and education is something that aids with that. So we are going to try to assist with that as well. We're also going to be looking at using techniques of communication, training, as well as participation to overcome resistance to change. And resistance to change is something that we are all going to encounter. Finally, we're going to be dealing with the effective and humanly, to effectively and humanly address the negative impact of change. All right, as we will see, as with everything else, with positive, there's always going to be something negative to push back. All right. So with this now, I'm going to be handing you over now to Mr. Raf Guerra to continue our presentation. Raf?
Thank you, Jason. Good morning to everyone. Topic 1, we're dealing with change or perish. That simply means, from an organizational standpoint, we must accept change. Otherwise, that organization which we represent, or any organization for that matter, can be left by the wayside. So as we see on the slide, there's a quote from Mr. Jack Welch. He says that when the rate of change outside exceeds the rate of change inside, the end is in sight. Jack Welch, who was a former longtime chairman and CEO of General Electric, emphasized that the fact that internal organizational changes must keep pace with what is happening in the external environment. That is a serious challenge in today's world for any organization. Due to the rapidity of social, economic, and technological change, this means that organizations must be perpetually changing and adapting in order to keep pace. Environmental forces such as globalized economy, shifting geopolitical forces, changing markets, the growth of e-business, and the swift spread of information via the internet are creating more threats as well as more opportunities for organizational leaders. Many organizations struggle to adapt to this evolving environment. However, the key solution lies in effective change leadership. Leaders as role models drive motivation and communication to propel change efforts. Successful leaders possess defining qualities. As we see here, these defining qualities are, number one, they see themselves as change leaders, not simply advocates for the status quo. Two, their courage is demonstrated. Three, they believe in employees' ability to take on responsibilities. They don't just hang over employees' shoulder. You know, they don't micromanage. They give people an opportunity to express themselves and their abilities. Four, articulating values that foster adaptability is a skill that successful change leaders possess. They also learn from their mistakes. This is very much integral, is very important. We must take note of our successes, which we often do, but sometimes we make the mistake of not learning from our mistakes. There are a lot of lessons to be learned from failure. Successful change leaders, they also navigate the complexity and uncertainty and ambiguity through tough times. So they lead by example. They lead when, you know, there's a saying, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. That's when you need strong leadership. These successful leaders, change leaders, they are also visionary, and they could vividly describe their future vision. Change does not happen easily. Good leaders throughout an organization can facilitate change and help their organizations adapt to external threats and new opportunities. So it is very much important to note that one does not need to be a top leader to be a change leader. Anybody can, in essence, instigate change, but it takes effort, right? So you don't have to be the boss of a company to initiate change. Change can start anywhere throughout the organization. We now reach topic 2, leading a major change. When leading a major change project, it is important for leaders to recognize that the change process goes through stages, and each stage is important. Each stage may require a significant amount of time. Leaders are responsible for guiding employees and the organization through this change process. As a leader, you can develop personal characteristics to be a change leader. To improve the success of a major change, you can follow the 8-stage model for leading change, remembering to devote the necessary amount of time for each stage. Don't skip a stage or don't take them for granted. Each one is equally important, and we need to focus our energies and resources to each one of them. To successfully implement change, leaders must pay careful attention to each stage. Skipping stages or making critical mistakes at any stage can cause the change process to fail. So here we have at stage 1, leaders must establish a sense of urgency that change is really needed. Through crises or threats, this will make things cold, make change seem, unnecessary. And that in itself will bring resistance to change. Leaders must make others aware of the need for this change. They must carefully scan the external and internal environment, looking at competitive conditions, market position, social, technological, and demographic trends, including profit and loss. There are other factors as well. After identifying potential crises or problems, they can find ways to communicate the information broadly and dramatically throughout the organization. Stage 2 involves establishing a coalition with enough power to guide the change process, and then developing a sense of teamwork among the group. For the change process to succeed, there must be a shared commitment to the need and possibilities for organizational transformation. Middle management change will seek top leader support in this coalition. It is also essential that lower level executives become involved. Mechanisms such as offsite retreats can get people together and help them develop a shared assessment of problems and how to approach them. So very often, well, it has been in our experience where we may have a retreat. The organization may have a retreat, and we spend the majority of the day socializing, for want of a better term, right? That is good in itself. However, we must make time during these retreat sessions to actually share views on and try to assess whatever problems that we may be faced with and try to come up with solutions to these issues. Don't just go and lime and drink and have a good time and forget the issues. And then when we go back to work, it's problems. Stage 3, this requires developing a vision and strategy. Leaders are responsible for formulating and articulating a compelling vision that will guide the change effort. Then, developing the strategies for achieving that vision. A picture of a highly desirable future motivates people to change. Stage 4, leaders must use every means possible to widely communicate the vision and strategy. Don't keep it a secret, right? At this stage, the coalition of change agents should set an example by modeling the new behaviors needed from employees. They must communicate the change at least 10 times more than they think is necessary. This is very important. The more you talk about it, the more information you share on the issue, is the more ambiguity and questions this will alleviate, these concerns that the employees may have. Transformation is impossible unless a majority of people in the organization are involved and willing to help, often to the point of making personal sacrifices. Stage 5 involves empowering employees throughout the organization to act on this vision. This means getting rid of obstacles to change, which may require revising systems, structures, or procedures that hinder or undermine change effort. People are empowered with knowledge, resources, and discretion to make things happen. So you give them the information, you give them the resources, and you give them the power to make to initiate change. The management system must also be changed to give people the freedom to make decisions themselves without waiting for a supervisor to review the problem. That's called initiative. Give people the latitude to take initiative. Stage 6, leaders generate short-term wins. Leaders will plan for visible performance improvement, enable them to happen, and celebrate employees who were involved in the improvements. As little as change or success might be or might seem, it's very much important to give recognition where recognition is due. So major change, it takes time. This is not an overnight thing. And a transformation effort loses momentum if there are no short-term accomplishments that employees can recognize and celebrate. A highly visible, successful short-term accomplishment boosts the credibility of the change process and renews the commitment and enthusiasm of employees. This brings us to stage 7. Stage 7 says to keep up the urgency. Building on the credibility and momentum achieved by the short-term wins to tackle bigger problems. Successful change leaders don't simply declare victory after small wins and become complacent. They use courage and perseverance to give people the energy and power to take on more difficult issues. This often involves changing the systems, the structures, and policies of the organization, hiring and promoting people who can implement the vision, and making sure employees have the time, resources, and the authority they need to pursue the vision. Last but not least, stage 8. This is where leaders make the changes stick. The transformation isn't over until the changes have become well established throughout the organization. Leaders must instill new values, attitudes, and behaviors so that employees will review the changes. So that the employees will view the changes not as something new, but as a norm and as something integral to how the organization operates. So leaders must celebrate and promote people, as mentioned before, who act according to the new values. This stage also requires developing a means to ensure leadership development and succession so that the new values and behaviors are carried forward to the next generation of leadership. On this note, we've come to topic 3 of the chapter, and I wish to now hand over to Mr. Peter Edwards. If indeed anyone has any questions, I'll be glad to answer any such questions if you all may have. If not, I'll be handing over to Mr. Edwards. No questions? Okay. Mr. Edwards, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raf. Pleasant afternoon to you, sir, and pleasant afternoon to the class. So today it is my pleasure to present to you all topic 3, leading everyday change. So change, though inevitable, can oftentimes be dangerous. Yes, it can be dangerous. So I have decided to share a quote with you all just to show you the serious nature which change can hold, for especially innovators. It's a quote from Niccolo Machiavelli, and I quote, "We should always bear in mind that there is nothing more difficult and dangerous or more doubtful of success than an attempt to introduce a new order of things in any state. The innovator has for enemies all those who derive advantages from the old order of things, whilst those who expect to benefit from the new institutions will be but lukewarm defenders. So I want to engage the class now. Has anyone of you all ever stumbled across this experience? Okay, well, I have stumbled across it many a times, but let's move on. Although things are not as clear-cut and as barbaric in the 16th century as it was in the 16th century, it's clear to see that today resistant change still exists. So leaders are charged to overcome resistance quite often. So it's important for leaders to learn new strategies for effective change to avoid fear and resistance. Next slide, please. Yes. So back to the topic, leading everyday change. The strategies that we employ can be done through everyday change, meaning everyday conversations, demeanor, etc. So even more actions can depict everyday change to our subordinates as leaders. So I want to highlight and describe some of these strategies that leaders can use to instill everyday change. So we have 1, creative self-expression. 2, using the right words. 3, finding the right opportunities. And 4, alliance building. So creating self-expression. This is the least conspicuous way for leaders to promote change. It involves a single leader acting in a way that others will notice and that will reflect the values or behavior he or she wishes to instill in followers. Creative self-expression quietly unsettles others' expectations. Moving along now to using the right words. With this strategy, a leader turns an opponent's negative attitude or comments or behaviors into opportunities for change. Moving along now to right opportunities. So leaders look for, create, and capitalize on opportunities that motivate change for others. You know, we have a saying that timing is everything. Well, if you want to change things, you know, we have to look for the right time. We have to look for the right opportunities to change things. The right time might be any time of a crisis, I would say, because a crisis time is a great opportunity. And we as leaders should look at it like that. So moving on to number 4 now, alliance building. So with strategic alliance building, the leader works closely with others to move issues to the forefront more quickly and directly than would be possible working alone. This is the most public and political approach to everyday change. The leader will enlist the support and assistance of people who agree with his or her ideas for change. And in addition, smart leaders look at everyone, even those who may be opposed to their ideas or projects, as a potential ally. We ought not to underestimate the importance of building strategic alliances by reaching out to the opposition as well as those who agree or support our ideas. So before we move on to the next topic, does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, so let's move on to topic 4, leading for innovation. So within recent times, innovation has become a top priority for organizational leaders in some countries of the world like United States, Europe, and Japan. So recognizing the increasing innovation needed to keep up with technological advances and global competitors from countries such as China and other developing nations, a shift in focus is taking place in the industries of the world, especially in the first world nations, G7s, so to speak. So instead of focusing on efficiency and cost cutting, leaders are restructuring their organizations to foster creativity and innovation. So we have shifted from the knowledge economy of the late 1990s and early 2000s to what is known as the creative economy. So companies are adapting to generating economic value through creativity, imagination, and innovation. And the fourth thing we want to be discussing in this topic is, you should always remember that creativity is a journey rather than a destination. Next slide, please. So the following is a table showing the characteristics of innovative organizations and creative people. These are some of the characteristics you have to display in order to be successful in leading innovation. And this will be further detailed in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. So we have alignment. Everyone in the organization must be aligned to the organization purpose, visions, goals, and interests. Commitment of time, energy, and resources. So everyone in an innovative organization, they must be aligned with these principles. Next slide. Now, many organizations, they set up separate creative departments or venture teams, right? A popular approach to this is the idea incubator, which is a safe harbor to develop employee ideas without interference from company, bureaucracy, or policies. Next slide. Now, leaders have the power to unlock profound employee motivation for creativity and innovation. So they achieve this by fostering an entrepreneurial spirit, instilling values of risk-taking and exploration, establishing structures and systems for new ideas. Next slide. Corporate entrepreneurship is an initial entrepreneurial spirit that includes values of exploration, experimentation, and risk-taking. Idea champions. Since change doesn't usually happen by itself, managers need to identify idea champions. These are people that believe in new ideas and work to overcome obstacles and resistance. Personal energy and effort are necessary, and they ensure that valuable ideas get accepted and implemented. Unofficial activity. Employers or managers should facilitate unofficial activity. That is, allowing employees to experiment and dream outside the job description. People should be given free time for activities that are not officially sanctioned. So one study of creativity found that in almost every case, the essence of the creative art came during the unofficial time period. Diverse stimuli. Leaders can also provide employees with diverse stimuli. They can do this by rotating people into different jobs, allowing time off for volunteer activities, allowing opportunities to mix with different people, and allowing people to work with customers, suppliers, and people from outside the industry to foster new ideas. Internal communication. Creativity flourishes with frequent contact and networking throughout the organization. Leaders should encourage people to communicate across boundaries. Leaders can ignite creativity, encourage curiosity and playfulness, build mechanisms for cross-functional collaboration and information sharing. They can also hire people who display the characteristics of creative individuals. Characteristics of people. Now, leading creative people, you need people that are open-minded, curious, independent, self-confident, persistent, and focused. There's a study that says everyone has roughly equal creative potential. I want you all to remember that in a few slides to come. So brainstorming. This is a good way leaders can encourage creativity by setting up brainstorming sessions. So the key to having these brainstorming sessions effective are no criticism, welcome freewheeling, meaning that allowing people to think freely, no matter how crazy it might seem to others. And the quantity is desired, meaning the more ideas that come into fruition is the more the leader will have to choose from for a desired idea. So lateral thinking is a more creative approach as well. Lateral thinking is a set of systematic techniques used for changing mental concepts and perceptions and generating new ones. So lateral thinking is like a move sideways to try different perceptions, concepts, and points of entry to gain a solution to a problem. Creative intuition. There are two stages of creative intuition. This is the data gathering stage, the accumulation of information when studying material related to a problem, and creative insight. This surfaces as intuition from the deeper subconscious. Now, trusting this initiative process might be challenging for some business executives, yeah, as it may appear subjective, but it is still used anyway. So here's a fun activity for us to unlock our creative potential. I would like the class to participate in this one. Here we have an arrangement of 1 to 6 matches. So from this illustration below, I want the class to tell me how we can remove 3 of the matches and still leave 4. Anyone want to take a crack at it?
You could move the top, the bottom, and the right side match. Great match stack, sorry.
Very good, Randy. If we burn off number 1, number 2, and number 3, we end up with 4. Yeah, the Roman numerals for IV. So let's move on. Let's do another problem like that. So this is an equation in Roman numerals. The challenge is, if you are creative, correct this equation without touching the matches or adding new matches or taking away any matches. Anyone from the class? Nobody want to take a stab at it?
I would say turning it around and watching it from the upside down basically.
Very good, Ryan.
Correct.
Yes, upside down, we have here in Roman numerals, 10 is equal to 1 plus 9, and the equation is corrected. So I want to thank you guys for listening and thank you guys for participating. This is the end of my part of the presentation. So are there any questions? So if there are none, I want to hand you over to Mr. Jairaj, who will continue with topic 5. Mr. Jairaj.
Thanks, Peter. Right. Implementing change. Leaders frequently see innovation, change, and creativity as a way of strengthening the organization. But plenty people would view it that there would always be resistance then, because it is painful and disruptive, right? The critical aspect of leading people through change is understanding that resistance is natural. Resistance to change is natural, and there are often legitimate reasons for it, right? Employees often resist change because it goes against their mutual understanding, known as the personal compact, between them and the organization. This compact includes defined elements like job tasks, performance expectations, evaluations, procedures, and compensation packages, some of which may be explicitly outlined. Right, next. Right, I'm sure someone must have heard of the term a dead horse, right? He outlined some strategies for dealing with a dead horse, right? You could change the rider, buy a stronger whip, beat the horse harder, shout and threaten the horse, promote the dead horse to a supervisory position, right? I mean, in most organizations, this does happen, right? It does happen, and It is a theory not widely recognized, right? However, it refers to a way of describing how a group of people continuously invest time, effort, and resources into something that clearly does not work or is not working and is futile or unproductive, right? The idea is that you just can't make a dead horse come back to life. You can't revive hopeless and unproductive endeavors, right? The lesson that we learn from that is that it is essential that we evaluate your efforts and be willing to adapt to change or abandon the course of action when it becomes apparent that it's no longer effective. It is a reminder to avoid sunk cost fallacy, which is a tendency to continuously invest in something simply because you already invested time and resources, even when it's clear that the effort won't yield positive results, right? I mean, next slide. Implementing change. Some tools that we use to implement change. Right? The leaders immobilize people by engaging their hearts and mind. What you want to do is that we also tell stories, metaphors, humor, symbolism, and personal touches, emotions. Emotional elements are essential for persuading and influencing people, right? What happened? Communication and next slide. There are some specific techniques that we use to implement the process of change, right? Communication and change and training. Open and honest communication is perhaps the most single and effective way to overcome resistance to change because it reduces uncertainty. It gives people a sense of control, right? They want to be able to have some form of control. It clarifies the benefits of the change and it builds trust. It's important that leaders communicate with people face to face rather than they just send a email or WhatsApp. You know, these days everybody tech savvy. Most of the time you're getting information, it coming through your phone, it coming via WhatsApp, anything, right? Training. Employees also need to acquire skills for the new change, the new role in the process of change, right? And the leaders, as leaders, you make sure that people get the required training and they're comfortable to perform their tasks. Participation and involvement, right? This involves followers in helping design the change. You allow them to assist and get involved, you know, so they won't feel left out, right? Although this approach is time consuming, it pays off by giving people a sense of control over the change activity that's coming. They understand that change is better and they become a little more committed and it is successful implementation. Coercion. Well, this is basically threatening the employees, right? You're threatening them with loss of job, no promotion, fire them, transfer them, right? Is maybe necessary in crisis situations when change, you need a rapid response, right? It also is also a need for administrative change that flows from the top down, such as downsizing the workforce. However, generally, this approach to change is not advisable because it leaves people angry with the leaders and the change may be sabotaged, right? We don't want that happening, right? We don't want sabotage and we don't want people vexed, right? Two faces of change. Change has two faces, right? Effectively leading change is a challenge for leaders, given that the dynamics and unsettling nature of today's environment. While change can be exhilarating, it is also it also has the potential to be inconvenient, painful, and frightening, even when change is beneficial to both the individuals and the organization. Mishandling it can decrease morale, lower commitment, and diminish trust. Right? As you can see, change is necessary for the organization's well-being. It may have negative consequences for individual employees. They might face heightened stress, the need to rapidly acquire new skills and work. Right? Leadership and downsizing. Downsizing refers to the intentionally reduction of the size of the company's workforce. Sometimes there are times when downsizing is necessary as part of a thoughtful restructuring of assets or other important initiatives, right? In recent times, as we all know, right here in Trinidad, there has been a lot of downsizing taking place. Tech, Wassa, Petrotrin, the famous Petrotrin, right? That is where job cuts are necessary. The leaders also must be prepared to face conflict and stress, or even greater resistance to this change and decrease in morale, trust, and employee commitment. Right? We have some techniques for change, right? Leaders should communicate changes to the subordinates and give them as much details as possible, even if uncertainties exist, right? They'll be open and honest, involve the employees in decision making. Also, such as determine job cuts, foster transparency, provide options like voluntary departure, incentives, job sharing, part-time work can be beneficial, right? To support these displaced workers, leaders should offer some form of assistance in terms of training programs, severance packages, benefits, extended benefits, outplacement services, counseling for the employees and their family, because that is important, because I mean, they have been displaced and we don't know what they'll be facing at home mentally, right? It not only alleviates the trauma of job loss, but it demonstrates that as a leader, that leadership, you are concerned for your people, right? This care contributes to ease of the emotions of the remaining workers who remain or who are dealing with the confusion, guilt, anger, and sadness over the loss of their colleagues. And now I hand you over to Mr. Shields.
Jason? All right, it seems like Jason has left us. So, in summary, all right, this chapter emphasizes that.
I apologize for that.
Okay.
I've been
Go ahead.
some because of the weather, I'm having some issues, and I just kind of got back in. Right, I was paying attention on my phone after a while. So,
Sure.
in summary, you've heard a very informative presentation there, and for us to summarize, we just want to reiterate that what the things that we touched on were we emphasized on the tools for creativity and innovation and change. We also touched on change leadership traits, and especially I know a lot of you would have paid attention to the 8-stage model, all right, and everyday change strategies, and they fostered innovation, as well as the implementation tools and challenges, including downsizing. Downsizing is one of those things that we have been seeing in Trinidad and Tobago for in recent years, and that's something that's definitely It's one of those things that influence change, and we touched on that. Finally, what we also touched on was acknowledging both the negative and positive consequences of change, right? Those things are very, very important as well. Okay, so as they said, as we see, this has brought us to the end of our presentation. And at this point, although I knew that Peter would have engaged the class in some sort of interaction, at this point, we will entertain any questions that you all will have. Are there any questions? I'm not seeing any hands, so it's one of two things. Either many of you may have had some of the connectivity problems that I would have had, or this was a very, very informative and well put together presentation by this group. So at this point, we want to thank Mr. Bissou, and we want to thank all of you for being so attentive to our presentation. On behalf of Raf Gera, Jairaj Samsundar, and Peter Edwards, I am Jason Shields, and we thank you for being here. And this is the actual end of our presentation. So I hand you over back to Mr. Bissou.